All right, we are live. I hope everyone can hear me today. I am really Beth Spotso. I'm Alta's digital editor. If this is the first time you're joining us, hi, thanks for tuning in. This is Alta Asks Live. It's the digital version of an author interview series we do at altaonline.com. Today we have the spectacular Heather Scott Partington back. She is an author, a teacher, a book critic, and one of the most regular contributors to Alta. She's here to speak with author Edan Lepucki. Edan's going to discuss her book, Mothers Before, about, among other exciting things, and their talk's going to last about 30 minutes. I have to apologize. I'm actually, speaking of Mothers Before, I'm hiding in a child's bedroom right now so that my 19-month-old doesn't see me while the babysitter puts him down for a nap. So I don't remember being a mother before, but hopefully we can, or being a woman before I was a mother, but hopefully we can talk about that. While you're watching, please consider becoming a member of Alta for $24 a year. You can subscribe to our fabulous quarterly magazine. Also, now more than ever is a great time to support authors and independent booksellers. If you want to learn more about Mothers Before, there's a button right underneath us that will lead you to bookshop.org. It's a place to buy books and support independent booksellers. Please ask questions. You can ask them in the comments, or there's a little question button as well, and we will get to those at the end of the discussion. Again, we're going to go about a half an hour. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather and Edan. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Beth. And just at the top, I wanted to welcome Edan, and I wanted to thank her for being flexible about the date. So Edan and I talked a little bit on our original date, and we both felt like it was important to postpone our interview so that we could let the Black Lives Matter movement have the attention that it deserved and the protests that have been happening for change. So I just wanted to thank Edan for being flexible, and thank Alta for being flexible, and just mention up front that Edan and I are both supportive of the important movement that's happening.
Yes, thank
so
you.
Yeah. So Edan, how are you doing?
Can anyone just say fine anymore? I mean, I'm fine. I always am like, I'm fine, all things considered. Yeah. I'm okay.
And you're at home with, I'm good. I mean, again, all things considered,
Yeah.
I feel lucky that nobody in my direct family has COVID.
Mhm.
And, we're just thinking about in our house how we can support important causes right now. And, there's just a lot going on. There's just a lot happening.
Yeah, it's probably, I would say, the most intense few months of my life, I would say, because I have 3 kids who are home. Thankfully, the oldest, who's in just finished 3rd grade, so school ended. So that feels like a little bit of an exhale for now, as we don't have to do the dreaded distance learning.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to just start with talking about, so Mothers Before is a beautiful collection of essays and photographs, and a wonderful book, sort of coffee table book, I would say, but very literary, and there's some amazing stuff in there. And so I wanted to just kind of talk about the genesis of this as a project, because I know that it didn't start initially as a book.
No, it has a funny history, and I write novels, so the way that this became a book is really almost like if you told me 5 years ago that this would have happened, I would have thought the person was joking. But I had my second novel is called Woman Number 17, and it's a novel that has an artist character who has trouble with her mother, and she does an art project where she asks people for photos of their mothers before they became mothers. And I thought it would be kind of a cool publicity stunt to start an Instagram that did that very project. And I asked women and non-binary people to submit photos to me of their moms before they became moms, with little captions about either the photo or something about their mother's life, anything kind of related to that topic. And I thought, this would be a good way to promote my book. But it sort of just took on a life of its own. And I didn't quite expect this to happen, but as soon as I started getting the first bunch of photos, which were from friends of mine, and then I, put a call out online, like on Twitter and stuff, I knew that there was something really special about it because the photos were just always so interesting. Like they were either like really like sexy, or they were funny, or they were mysterious. And then the things that people would write, even just in a couple sentences, would just like slay me. Like it would be about, a woman's whole life in just a sentence, the war that she had lived through, or the bad divorce, or how she was so good at whatever, skee ball or something. Just these great stories about people's lives. And the Instagram kind of just became its own beast. Nobody really remembers that it was for woman number 17, which is fine. I wrote a piece about it for the New York Times, which then went viral, which is also a weird experience. And my agent was like, I think you need to make this into a book. And I actually thought it was a great idea because it allowed me to publish work that wasn't on the Instagram. Like I didn't want to make the Instagram, I didn't want to put the Instagram inside a book. That seemed like, why would you do that? So it was kind of an opportunity to get new material, reach out to writers that I really admire and artists that I like, just people that I in general want to know. And I said they could write short captions like on the Instagram or longer essays. And again, I kind of gave them that same freedom. Write about the photograph, write about your mother, about your relationship to your mother. And now it's a book.
One of the things that I love about it is that it's diverse, but in many ways. So there are women, there are non-binary people, there are people from all different backgrounds. There are also people who have all different jobs. So you have a nice, section where you kind of give a short bio on everybody, and not everyone who's represented in the book is a writer even. So did you solicit writer submissions first, or did you how did you cast such a wide net?
Well, I wanted to make sure on one point, I wanted to make sure that it was diverse in all kinds of ways, because I think sometimes when we think about diversity, it only is about race. And obviously that is so important as we're talking about it right now in terms of like having Black people represented in media and publishing and wellness, that is a really important conversation. And I also think having a diverse group of people like socioeconomically is so important. Age was really important to me. Like, I feel like there's all these companies that always shout diversity and then everyone in the pictures is like 24. So I want to hear about people whose mothers grew up during the Depression, and I want to hear about people whose mothers grew up in the 80s. Like I wanted someone who was just turned 18 and someone who was in her 70s or 80s. Like I wanted both of those. And I wanted to make sure too that not everyone had like, oh, my mother is my favorite person, because I don't think that people can say that. And then originally I thought, like, when I pitched the book, I was like, and these are the people that I would like: Michelle Obama and like Sarah Jessica Parker. And like, I just like named all these people that I were like, and Beyonce's cool. But I don't know about you, but I don't have Beyonce's personal phone number.
Unfortunately.
So I had to kind of, first I tried a few different avenues with some of the celebrities, and then it's interesting to me, so many of them have a lot of walls around them. So at a certain point I was like, well, it'd be kind of weird if I was like, I'm just going to change tactics, because in the end I was like, do I really care about celebrity? No, I personally don't care. I mean, there are people that I admire, but if I can't get them, then let me switch. So originally I was going to have like the celebs, the writers, and then at first I didn't know what to call them. So then we started calling them civilians, which also felt weird. But they were the non-writers. Some of them are from they're from the Instagram, like people I didn't know, but I really love the photo. Like there's a couple that are straight from the Instagram, and then there are a couple whose stories I really liked, and I was like, do you have more pictures? Like, for instance, this is Cassandra's mother. This one was on the Instagram. But then there'd be others that were like I was like, do you have other photographs? So Jasmine, who I love, we have since become
I love that one.
Instagram friend. So she had another photo, and then she sent me this and told me so much more about her mother's life. But so a lot of the people who came from the Instagram were not writers. And then there were just other people in my life. My mother has a piece in it. My grandmother has a piece in it. And, a woman that I interviewed for a podcast I used to do called Mom Rage, she is a lactation consultant and a midwife. So I knew she had a lot to say about motherhood. So I asked her to be part of it. There were kind of random people in the way that I felt kind of free in a way. Like I was the editor, so I could kind of ask whoever I wanted. So my mom, my little brother and sister's kindergarten teacher's in it. She's an artist. She was adopted. So I knew I wanted at least one. I only ended up with 2 stories of adopted children because I thought, well, that's obviously another motherhood story.
Right.
So there's sort of random people from other circles in my life. And I think what's cool about it is you do get the kind of moving essays from writerly essays. And then you get other ones that are also very moving. But to me, some of them have a kind of, I don't want to, like an oral history quality to them a little bit. Like they're intimate in this unvarnished way, I guess. And I think everybody can speak in interesting ways about their parents, whether or not they're mothers or not.
Yeah. I mean, and I liked that, they weren't all positive. They weren't all negative necessarily. They were complicated, and to me, it felt like, just like when you read a really good short story collection, how your brain begins to like make those little webs of connections between things. And to me, that's amazing, that motherhood, that there are these points of connection, but also there's so many different ways to be a mother. This is not like chicken soup for the the Mother's Day or whatever, it's just very, like, I like that it was complex. I like that I started to like feel those connections. Were there things that stood out to you as the editor as you put it together, like these things kind of trended across the essays?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, what struck me is how different they were. Like some are super light and funny and some are real heavy. A lot of them end in questions, like literally a question mark, which I thought was fitting considering you're trying to piece together who your mother was before you knew her. So there's always the unknown. There's the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, all that kind of stuff. So I sort of liked that quality. I think there's a kind of grappling or like there's either an appreciation or a grappling to appreciate, if that makes sense. Like there's some people for whom it's very easy for them to like appreciate their mother and to like really appreciate what came before. And I think for other people, it's like a kind of struggle, or like you want to be able to appreciate it, but you either can't because your relationship is thorny or because it's like almost too magnificent or too like that past was so challenging that they can't even really grasp it whole. So I felt like I saw that again and again. And of course, I think with any stories about women, there's a lot in there about, what opportunities were available to their mothers as opposed to what opportunities were available to the daughter. Jennifer Egan asks, like, what if my mother had been born even 5 years later? Like how much, like, would she have had a professional life that mattered to her? Or Camille Dungy thinks about like her Black mother in this like very segregated town and like how that affected her life for the rest of her life, and how she was loved personally by the people around her, but she also knew there was all this hate out there. So I think there's a lot of questioning and really interrogating, like generationally and politically, what each mother had to go through.
Did anything about putting this collection together, did it change you as a mom, or about how you think about motherhood? I know your kids are pretty young still.
Pretty young. I'm not so seasoned as you. Well, I think like, I feel like I feel like I'm pretty hard on myself at times in my mothering. Like mothering is not going to give you an A. You don't get there's no star. And like, of course, on a day where you feel like you really like hit it out of the park, either you were able to like handle a child's like big emotions, or you just didn't completely lose your mind, whatever the case may be, you're going to get brought back down to earth the very next day, probably. Like there's never a time for me where I'm like, nailed it, done with this mothering thing. So I think it was instructive to see, like, I think because when I'm looking at these pieces, I'm looking at them both as a mother and as a daughter. So I can think of my own mother through the lens of a daughter. And then when I think of her life as a fellow mother, I'm much more kind of like forgiving of her. And I think she's a terrific mother. So I think it's enabled me in some way to kind of like forgive myself for anything that I don't do exactly as I would like to do in my mind. Just because I feel like every mother-child relationship is just so complicated. It's so nuanced. And I have no idea really what my kids are going to decide about how I was as a mom when they're looking back. And it's also, I kind of feel like I'm going to, as a mother, sort of let them have their own narrative. Like they're going to have their own version of their upbringing that's going to be different from, I mean, hopefully there'll be some overlaps, but they have a different perspective. And I also think when they look at old pictures of me, they're going to bring all the knowledge about me as a mother to those photographs. And so it's like kind of a weird feeling to be like, okay, well, you're not going to really know me, but also just like letting them do that. And that's what I'm giving them. Like I gave them life and then I really have to give it to them and let them have their own perspective. And I think there's some liberation in that.
And you mentioned in our written interview too, that, as you put this together, it really gave you a sense of the fact that you can never really know anybody else, that you can know portions of them that have to do with your own experience. But, it reminded me of, like when you're studying nonfiction and somebody will write something autobiographical, and as writers, we try to just talk about the narrator. We're not even really talking about like, well, when you did this or when you did that, but it's about what's on the page. And I felt that too as I was reading the book. Like for these photographs, they're like these moments where we're not really looking at a full story. We're looking at this moment, and people are bringing their own experience with their mom to that. And because these are photographs that all are from before the kids were around, there's sort of this happening a little bit that we can't really ever know anybody else. Is there something about, was there something about bringing this together that influenced you as a writer?
It's a good question. I don't know. It's interesting because as an editor, it was just so thoroughly enjoyable. I don't think I've ever had such an enjoyable writing experience, but then I was like, oh, because I didn't have to do all the work. Everybody else did the work. But I did sort of get into this idea of like, one, it reminded me of why I like fiction, both as a writer and a reader. I think there is a kind of like mining of mystery that I love as a reader. And when I'm writing character, like who is this person? What makes them tick? And why are they doing what they're doing? And getting deeper and deeper, but then also that not knowing, like never really being able to know. Charles Baxter in his book, The Art of Subtext, kind of talks about this, I feel like, if I remember correctly, this idea of like, there's this thing that influences character, but you don't even know as the author what that mystery is. And I think that's present in a lot of these stories because there is some fictionalization occurring in every one of them because you don't know the people. It also has gotten me to think about like that idea you kind of mentioned of like what's beyond the frame. Like I'm just going to have an example here. Like this is Lisa C's mother, Carolyn C, who wrote a bunch of, she's like a leader of Southern California fiction. She died a few years ago, but I just love this photo of thinking of like, it's one of the only photos that survived of her mother's youth. And her back's to the camera. So already you're like, turn around. Who is she posing for? What are those glass? Is she at a bank or something? And it's sort of jogs that writer in me that just wants to storytell a little bit. And so I don't think I really have learned anything beyond just learn that I love to write and read and that it's sort of like has made me want to like get back into it. It's sort of inspiring to me. If that makes sense.
That's great. There's a lot of mystery to a bunch of the photographs too. Like I felt like they invite you to be curious about what's happening in them, which I think is really cool. do you have any favorites, any like
Oh man.
anecdotes or other? It's great that you've been showing the pictures from it. Anything else that you want to share with us that was really remarkable for you?
Let me think here. Well, I have two. Well, it's kind of fun. As I mentioned, my mother wrote about her mom, my grandmother, and then my grandmother wrote about her mom, was my great grandmother, who I didn't really know anything about. So I thought that was really beautiful. And then I got my friend Laura Shields to write about her mom, and then we got Laura's mom to write about Laura's grandmother. So I love the idea, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the book that there's this like secret intergenerational
Genealogy, yeah,
thing going on in the book. What else can I tell you? I wanted to make sure that there were, as I said, there were a couple of adoptees written about. I wanted to make sure women whose mothers had died were represented, because I feel like people whose mothers aren't there, that's sometimes more of a story than people who are bothered by their mother's texts weekly, and that I have so many friends who have lost their mothers, and that loss has sort of become central to their adulthood. So I wanted to make sure that those stories were in here, and those ones really, those get to me. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I always feel like I can be like, just like unabashedly proud of it, because it's like not my stories. I can be like a champion, a coach.
Yeah, it's an awesome collection. Is the Instagram account still being updated? Are you still
Yes, I
actively?
actually, yeah, after George Floyd was murdered, I really just didn't, to be like totally frank, I didn't know what the place for mothers before was. And so I just took a break, but then I didn't want to just be silent. So I posted that I was taking a break, and I posted about two of the contributors are Black women who have books that are like out imminently or just out. So one was Britt Bennett's book, The Vanishing Half, which is like the #1 New York Times bestseller. So I promoted that book, and Kiki Petrosino, who's a poet, her new collection is called White Blood, I think. And I just got it, and it's about, she went to the University of Virginia, and it kind of looks into her genealogy and being a kind of half Black, half white, mixed rate student at the University of Virginia, and all of that comes with that. So I sort of promoted that. And then Kimberly Durden, who's the midwife, she's opening a birthing center in Inglewood. So that's going to help Black mothers. And so I sort of was like, what's my role here? I have like, who knows how many, 80,000, I think, followers. What can I use? Who can I amplify right now? And I haven't gone back yet. And right now, I just don't know what the role of it is, Yeah. Weird time.
Yeah. I think that's important too. I think kind of just waiting to see how that space can best be used. I think that's an important thing. What are, just to switch gears just a little bit, what are you working on now for yourself in your own Eden world?
What am I working on? I was writing a couple essays. I have a novel that is right here. You're in my office. That's right here. So it's like waiting to be revised. And then but I didn't want to work on it at the beginning of this quarantine. I was like, what is this? So then I just started writing a short story, which is now, it's a 45-page short story. So I'm like, what am I going to do with that? I keep joking to myself, that was a fun hobby. But it was, I will admit, like I just really loved writing it. Like it'd been a long time since I created a new fictional world. Like I'm not a novel that I've been working on it. All right, John. It was so fun to be like, oh, I'm in this new world, and it takes place during the quarantine. So that's what I've been working on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Will you tell people where they can find you online and follow along with all things Eden?
It's edanlepucki.com. That's EDA. You can see it right there. EDANLEPUCKI. And the Instagram, I think it's posted there on the side, is Mothers Before, and then my personal Instagram is Edan Lepucki.
Cool. Yeah. We're gonna invite Beth back to see if we have some audience questions.
Okay.
Here I come. You can hear me, but you can't see me.
We can't see you.
It's a science fiction version.
You got by your toddler, I think.
I'm literally hiding from a child right now. So one of the questions we got, Eden, was you didn't mention necessarily the novel that you've got right there. We got a little sneak peek of. Is this science fiction? Are you going to return to science fiction?
Was I ever doing science fiction is really the question. People who really read science fiction are like, no, she doesn't do science fiction. It does have time travel. So I guess the answer is yes. But again, in the way that California was post-apocalyptic, this is time travel in that way. So we'll see. There's no like time travel spaceship or anything.
And for those of you who are watching, Eden and I have an interview in the next issue of Alta that's coming out pretty soon as well. And we talk about California and post-apocalyptic stuff.
We do. I just added links to that last night. Eden, what in Mothers Before, was there any essay that surprised you the most?
Excuse me. I will say the one that surprised me the most actually is not about a mother. It's by Sanam Maluji. Her mother refused to give her a photo. And not only that, they were not on speaking terms. This is actually a picture of Sanam herself. So she submitted to me a self-portrait, a selfie, I guess you could say. She told me she was going to try to get it, and then she just sent me this, and then she submitted this like marvelous, really powerful essay about how she and her mom like can't connect. It says, maybe we could, if only the child me could talk to the child version of my mother, maybe we could understand each other. Maybe we could learn how to love each other. Now we are rocks, too hard, set, dry. But what if we were children again, softer? It's very beautiful. So that one, I was like, so many of these I would open up, but like, you just get them an email at that point, and I would just like cry.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But they're full of so many good surprises. Yeah.
How do you want, you have kids?
I do. I have an almost 9-year-old, a 4-year-old, and an almost 1-year-old.
How do you want them to write about you? How do you want them to?
I live in fear of the tell-all memoir. It's going to be called like, I'm done. Stories about my mother. Because I always say that when I'm mad. I'm done. I'm done. I hope that they know that I tried my best. I want them to my main thing is that I want them to feel free to be themselves. Like my mother gave that to me. And for any flaw that she has, that's like the core of the thing that she gave me. Like I'm me, and she never wanted me to be anybody else. And that's such a gift. And I think it's actually really hard to accept. Like I feel like emotional about it. I think it's hard to like let your children be who they're going to be. And that includes when they're like just being so shitty and bratty. And like for instance, like I was always really good in school. Like I loved school. And I don't know if my oldest son, I don't think he really loves school. And that's been really hard for me. And just to be like, okay, like, cool, let's figure out what you love. And I want to love you the way you are. So my goal is like to have that be a practice for me as a mother, so that when they're an adult, they say like, oh, my mom loves me because of me. This is hard though, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, now I just need to go tell my 19-month-old, whatever you want to do, dance, we're exactly out of time. So it's perfect timing for the last of our questions. I really want to thank Eden for joining us, Heather for doing this again.
Thank you, Eden.
Thank you, Heather.
The link right here, buy the book. You can check out Mothers Before. And join us tomorrow. We'll be back on regular Alta Asks live schedule with author and podcast host and friend of Heather. We did a practice yesterday, and I spent the whole time laughing. They have inside jokes, so hopefully they'll explain them all to us. Todd Goldberg will be joining us tomorrow at 12:30. So please do join us for that. If you missed any part of this interview, it'll be up on Alta Online later this afternoon. Again, thank you, Eden. Thank you, Heather. And thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.